Buen día, amigos y amigas. Bienvenidos y bienvenidas al Rincón del Profe Jeff. Here we are again for another episode on our visit through Latin America. It might not be quite as obvious today with the hat that I'm wearing where we're going, unless you recognize the flag. But in tiny letters, I don't know if you can see them there underneath the flag, we will be visiting Costa Rica. So this is a representation of their flag. And if you actually read the letters, it says Costa Rica 1821, which is quite common on a lot of the souvenir hats that you find if you do visit the Central American country of Costa Rica. That's the year in which they celebrate their independence from Spain. And it's a common date with a lot of countries in Central America, the 15th of September, 1821. And as always, there's more information on the history and links in our video description below. So, one of the reasons that I enjoy talking about Costa Rica is that it's one of the most frequent places that I visit. I've stopped counting the number of times we visited there because, as part of our study abroad program and Spanish experiences, we take groups of students to Costa Rica at least once a year. We've been doing that, except for during COVID, since about 2012. Before that, students could go study individually on their own in Costa Rica. But it's obviously been a big influence on the students here, and obviously I've had a lot of great uplifting experiences as I've gotten to know the culture and the people of Costa Rica. Just to show you, this is one of our things that we give to our students that participate in the trip, and MSU in Costa Rica, with a little sapo, a little frog there, and a hummingbird. In Spanish in Costa Rica, they're called colibri. I know we've talked about them having different names in other places, so we'll present that as we go. And then on the back is the classic phrase, which you may or may not have heard, which is pura vida. And so pura vida is a thing that we'll be discussing during uh, this episode. The literal translation, obviously, is pure life. The best translation that I've come up with, if you're Lion King fans from Disney movie days, it it means Hakuna Matata. You know, no worries. But it's a phrase that's used as a greeting, as a way to say goodbye, just a way to tell how you're doing. You'll hear it many times a day, and in the things that we'll cover today, you'll see it a lot. I actually had a student that one of the things that I ask students to do when we go on our trips to Costa Rica is to keep a cultural learning log. And if you're a student watching this, that's probably something that you're expected to do with these podcasts. And then, depending on the level of Spanish they're taking, they turn in uh, final summary of their learning logs, with a focus. And I had a student one year that wrote an essay on his quest for pura vida as he was there in Costa Rica. So it's a way of life, and so when I think of Costa Rica, the first words that come to mind are that pura vida. Okay, so well, let's jump into it. As usual, we need to start by uh, diving into the map here. We'll zoom out just a tiny bit so we can get our perspective again. So Costa Rica is in Central America, as we mentioned before, bordered on the north with Nicaragua and on the south with Panama. Um, as far as the European discovery is concerned, in 1502, Christopher Columbus hit the coast here of Costa Rica on his fourth trip to the Americas, and so that it started the contact with the Western world. Obviously, there were indigenous groups in Costa Rica, and I've included information on those in the links below. If you go to Costa Rica now, it's not a place where you'll find lots of ruins and things like you might in Mexico or South America, or even other parts of Central America, because Honduras and Guatemala have ruins all over the place as well. But what you will find, as we also talked with in Panama, there is evidence of a lot of passage between North and South, Central and South America. So there are items from both the Mayan and Aztec cultures in the north and the Inca in the south. So we visited the Museum of Natural History and Anthropología on one of our uh, visits to San Jose, and you can see those artifacts as part of that. So it's a super interesting place. But you'll notice that it does have coast on both the Caribbean side, El Caribe, and on the Pacifico. Okay, so just since we're talking about geography, we'll jump in. The capital city is San Jose, kind of right smack dab in the middle, and they call where San Jose is. You can see these series of towns and cities in here. This is called the Central Valley in Costa Rica, which is where the majority of the population is concentrated in Costa Rica. Okay, but then zooming back out, we'll show you the Caribbean side, and then a popular place for tourist destinations right now is the Pacific coast, obviously because of the beaches. Okay, an important city on the Caribbean side is the port of Limon, and it's been established for some time, but there was a big influx from. Let me zoom out a little bit so if we can find it up in. There we go. We can see Jamaica. There was a big influx of the slaves from Jamaica into Limon. So there's an interesting language and culture as we have that mixture of the two cultures there. I'll hold up a book you can see it in the video part. It's called Limon Blues. It's by Ana Cristina Rossi and talks about the culture, and it includes the language, which includes English and Pidgin and Spanish all in it. So it's a really interesting capture of that region and its culture. So if you're interested in that, check that out. Okay. Um, so talking about Costa Rica, a couple of things that are important. Costa Rica, there's I don't want to say a hyper focus because it's a great focus. Hyper seems to take it one step more. But one of the chief things that Costa Rica and Costa Ricans are known for is their focus on conservation. And it's such a tiny place when you compare it in size. I've heard people compare it to the size of the state of Connecticut in the United States. But within this small country here, you'll see that they actually there are over 180 different protected regions, and by protected we mean either refuges or national parks. But on the national level, they have 31 national parks just in that small place. Some of them include islands in the Pacific and in parts of the coast of the Caribe. But what that amounts to as far as total land coverage is approximately 25% of Costa Rica is in a protected status to maintain its, the pristine nature and the wildlife. As far as biodiversity is concerned, it contains about 5% of the biodiversity known to the world, and it's all in this little place. And it's all kinds of biodiversity, and of course you want to check out the videos in the video connections to videos in the description to get more information on that. So if you're a lover of nature and wildlife, this is a place to go. And in fact, when we talk about products with our cultural aspects, the environment is one of the most important products that we can talk about in in Costa Rica because of the focus that people have on that. So check it out. Okay, I've got a couple of, we'll jump out here for a second. We'll talk about some of the things that you'll see behind me here. The biggest of which is over here. You'll see got the mariposas, butterflies representing some of the wildlife and nature. Of course, one of the most important animals that people want to see, that our students want to see when I ask them in our orientation, what are you looking forward to seeing when we're in Costa Rica? And the first one they say is a perezoso, which is a sloth, and the other are the monos, the monkeys that live in Costa Rica. But up here you'll see a sack. It's a burlap sack that represents one of the most important products that is grown and exported from Costa Rica to many parts of the world, and that is café, so coffee. And a little bit more along in the podcast, we're going to see some video of us because when we go to Costa Rica with groups of students, we go to a sustainable coffee farm, a finca in the mountains of Costa Rica, and you'll get to see what that looks like and where the coffee comes from. So one of the things that people don't know about Costa Rica, and this was presented by one of the guides that we had when we were touring around different places, one of the most important products, as we mentioned, that's actually exported from Costa Rica, used to be, it's still up there pretty high, are microchips. I know that there's a huge Intel plant close to San Jose. They also manufacture and export a lot of medical instruments and things like that, but also because of the location and the resource of the people, I know that places like Amazon have and others have call centers that service Latin America and all here in the Central Valley when you remember back on the map close to San Jose. So lots of things offered that we don't know about unless you're reading and studying about it with Costa Rica. Now behind me you'll see this is one of the most popular souvenirs that students like to bring back. Obviously we spend a couple of days on the beach in between our weeks of study, and it's a representation of one of the bills for the money in Costa Rica. In Costa Rica, the money is called colones, and the one behind me is a bill that's the 20,000 colones, so 20,000 colones, and it's got the hummingbird on it. It's my favorite color, orange, but the money is very pretty in Costa Rica, with always representation of nature on it. So if you look it up, and there's links in the video description, the most popular bills are the red, they call it el rojo, and it has a deer on it, el venado. The most well-known one is a blue bill called the tiburon because it has a shark on it, and that's 2,000 colones. Then they have a 5,000 colones, which has a monkey, a mono on it, and it's yellow. And then you'll also see the verde, which is 10,000 colones, so 10,000 colones, and it has the sloth. So obviously that's one that everybody wants to collect too. Just at the time of recording, and just in general, I always tell people that the exchange rate is about 500 colones for $1. So 20,000 colones is about a $20 bill? No, it's about a $40 bill if I'm doing my math right. So yeah, it is interesting to see the different monetary devices and things like that. All right, well, enough of me talking. Let's get back to some of the things that we're going to talk about. Real quick, just a picture of San Jose. Again, this shows you a little bit of the Central Valley. Back in the back here, you'll see their national stadium. We took a group of students there a couple of times over our winter break, so we were there around New Year's, and one of the fun things they do is the big soccer teams in Costa Rica do a charity match, and you can see all four of the big teams, but there's three especially big ones: Saprissa, Heredia, and Alajuela. Um, but they play in the stadium, and all the proceeds go to help research cancer, especially in children. But of course, we can't talk about any country without jumping into their food. So one of the typical items that you'll see is what is called casado. Now, literally translated, casado is marriage, and what it means is it's a marriage of different things. So this is a casado, probably the chuleta or the carne de res. So the traditional parts of a casado include the rice here in the middle, the beans, so arroz and frijoles. You'll always have some type of a little ensalada and picadillo. This one's made of some a squash type vegetable called chayote, and then a protein. So this you could be changed with pollo, so chicken or pescado. Since there's a lot of fish in Costa Rica, or chuleta for some pork. And of course, they have vegetarian options. One of the things that's always included is kind of the dessert, is this plátano here, and they're usually prepared by baking and with sugar and things like that to make them very sweet. So that's the casado. One of the other typical things, especially for breakfast, is what is called Gallo Pinto. And what it's made up is of the previous day's old rice and beans, and so they mix it together with spices. Of course, for both of these, there'll be recipes there are recipes in the video description, but it's usually accompanied by some eggs with cheese, toast, and the one thing that's not pictured here is fruit. One of the key ingredients, we'll jump out here for a minute, is for a lot of cooking in Costa Rica is, of course, what's called salsa lisano, and it's a very important part of the Gallo Pinto. And if you're interested in getting this, there are ways, obviously there's ways to get everything on the internet, but it's very tasty sauce. My wife likes it as a salad dressing as well. So not quite a vinaigrette, but it's very tasty nonetheless. Just as on a funny side note, that uh, even McDonald's has jumped on the bandwagon with Gallo Pinto, and so you can actually go to McDonald's there and get what's called McPinto as part of your meal. So jumping quick to some people, because we're going to do something a little bit different in this episode compared to others, since I have been so many times to Costa Rica. Again, I didn't put a number on it before, but at least 15, 16 different trips with students and otherwise. We'll talk about a couple of famous person, and then we're going to jump into some of the videos that I've shot, especially as we interact with people and some of the places and activities in Costa Rica, so you can kind of get an idea about what it's like down there. So one of the famous people that I wanted to mention is Óscar Arias, who was president of Costa Rica twice. The first time from 1986 to 1990, and then the second time from 2006 to 2010. But he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1987 for his work on trying to establish peace accords in Central America. And Costa Rica's always been kind of a leader with that. Just to mention real quick, we'll jump back out, that one of the things that is notable about Costa Rica is back in 1948, the then president, whose name was José Figueres Ferrer, made a historical declaration and decision that they were going to disband their army and then use any armed forces in the country, and then use the money that would generally go towards military spending for use in education and other and health services for the people. So that started them off on this journey, and Óscar Arias is just a representation of how people in Costa Rica have always gone for peace over other things. Now, did it work out perfectly? Have there been issues with health and education? History has its way of telling those things. There are always problems with funding education, always problems with funding healthcare. So I've included some things in the video description so you can learn a little bit more about that. Okay. Well, let's jump into some videos and interactions here. So one of the links in your description will be my own webpage, and I've got a place here on our intensive language programs, which are we have them all over, but our biggest one is in where we have most students is with our partner school called CPI in Costa Rica. You can see here pictures of some of the groups that we've had, but if you're interested in studying abroad with NMSU in Costa Rica, there's a video here that shows, we're not going to show it on this podcast, but you can look at that on your own. So there's information about traveling there. You'll see pictures of some of the food, and then some videos that we're going to watch. A couple that we'll watch here today. We're going to take a little journey, just a brief visit on one of our river rafting trips that we took on the Caribbean side of Costa Rica. And then we're going to visit on several of our trips, we spent some time working with Nicaraguan immigrants. So we'll discuss that once we get there. But to find a lot of things out about Costa Rica, if you hold down the drop down menu, you can see there are separate things about places we go, some of the activities we do, information on the service projects that we do. The biodiversity page is super interesting, so you can see what kind of wildlife we come in contact with. When we're there, we see them almost every day. Well, not almost, we do see different things every day, and every trip has something different. Okay, but one of the most popular activities that we participate in every year is every trip is our zip lining experience. And I just wanted to show you a little bit of that. Many of you may have been zip lining, so on one of the trips we took our GoPro, so we'll let you see and experience a little bit of what that's like in Costa Rica.
Perfecto.
Hola, adiós.
Ok, cierto.
¿Listo?
Sí. Ajá. Perfecto, haces un toque arriba. Perfecto, ok.
Chao. Okay, so there you got to see a little bit of what it looks like in the cloud forest. This is actually up in Monteverde. We'll jump over here to the maps. So that's one of the places we go up here in the mountains. It's next to a couple of biological reserves, and here in the mountains, it's right on what we call the Continental Divide. We have the Continental Divide in the United States as well. So up here you can actually the view you saw from that was actually looking down from the mountains up here towards the Pacific Ocean. You can see the Pacific from there, from up there. On clear days, at certain places of that zip line trip, you can actually also see, if there aren't any clouds, which I've never seen it, but they have pictures of it. You can, since you're at the top, you can actually see the Caribbean side as well. So that was in Monteverde. They wanted to let you see a different one just to give you a feel for what it's like. This is actually the same trip, but we switched cameras with some of the ladies that went. You can see how the weather changes very quickly. So let's check out this one.
Your finger. Oh, yeah. Wave to the camera! Sí.
Suena fuerte al final.
Oh, this makes me laugh! Can you see? I'll just move my head. Okay, yeah.
Adiós.
Woo! We can't forget the break! That was way better.
Perfecto.
Very good. So you can see actually we were literally flying through the clouds in the cloud forest up there in Monteverde. So check out some of these things. One thing that I'd like to say about the experience, other than the adventure, and that shows an important product of Costa Rica with the tourism. That's obviously a big part, and I know they were hit very hard during COVID because things were shut down all over the place. But aside from all of the adventures and things like that, the students that when we go on these trips, we actually stay with host families in the communities where we're studying, and so we all get the interaction on a individual level. So they get to interact with, we call them their familia tica. So tica is the adjective that people use, that the Costa Ricans use to call themselves. Instead of Costarricenses or Costa Ricans, they use the word tico and tica. So they all have a mama tica and a papa tico, familia tica. So they get that experience. Okay, one more adventure real quick. Let's jump back to the map and I'll show you where we go from here. So a lot of these were before COVID. We haven't picked this activity up since yet, but hopefully we'll be able to add it soon. When we arrive, we always stay here in San Jose. So some of the activities that we do around San Jose to experience nature, we've got the Volcan Poas, which is up here, and on the other side of that is a place called the La Paz Waterfall Gardens. We've driven over here to the Caribbean side. I had it identified, just a sec. So we get on the Highway 32 and it goes through the Braulio Carrillo National Park, which is beautiful with it. Of course, Costa Rica is always green. If you come from a place like New Mexico, it's super eye-opening. But then this Highway 32 goes all the way over to the city of Limon, which I showed you earlier. But down here by Siquirres, we have taken a river rafting trip on the Pacuare River, which is, and here's the Pacuare River, and goes along there and ends up emptying into the Caribe. But the Pacuare River is rated as one of the top 5 as far as rapids and the beautiful scenery in the world. So we're not going to play the whole video. It's a days long trip, but back on the website, the the video will be in the description below. But if you back on my website, clear at the bottom, you'll see the video. I had the GoPro going for the whole time we were on the water. Of course, I sped some up so you can watch the whole thing you want if you want. It's a little over 30 minutes or so. But I wanted to give you a little bit of a perspective of what that part of the country looks like. According to the guides that we take when we go through this, one of the canyons that I chose to show us here on this section was included in the movie, one of the movies of Jurassic Park, which parts of it were filmed in Costa Rica as well. So let me stop talking and we'll get going with the video.
¡Pura vida! ¡Pura vida! ¿Quieren nadar? Little freak out, no?
Okay, well there you have a little bit of that. Obviously, again, you can watch that again. In those canyons, we've seen toucans flying back and forth, monkeys going along in the trees, iguanas out sunbathing on the rocks, and all kinds of things. So it's a beautiful experience to see and be in connection with the wildlife. As we've talked about, though, one of our favorite things are the service opportunities that we have, and we've done all kinds of things while we're there. We work with a group called Siempre Amigos, which reaches out to the community. In some communities, we've helped build sections of homes and things like that, kind of like Habitat for Humanity. We've helped paint schools. We've worked with a group called Somos Picnic. We'll put links to all this information in the description as well. And with Somos Picnic, we worked in a kind of not a retirement home, but a assisted living center for retired folks, people who need that kind of assistance, and also uh, kind of a daycare place for single mothers where so they could bring their kids, and so we played with them and things like that. Several years ago, we started working with a group in it's kind of we would call it a slum of San Jose called La Carpio, and it happens to be the place where a lot of the Nicaraguan immigrants live. Immigration is an issue in the entire world. We'll jump back to the map and explain a little bit more about this. So as we talked about with their positioning in Central America, Nicaragua is to the north, Panama to the south, and one of the big immigration issues happens with Nicaraguans, which is a comparatively poor country compared to economically poorer than Costa Rica. So a lot of people come from Nicaragua down into Costa Rica to work in especially agriculture and service type things with all of the tourists and tourist industry and hotels and restaurants and things like that that are there. And so there is both legal and illegal immigration from, in this case, north to south across the Nicaraguan border. And a lot of them who end up in Central Valley come to a barrio, we call it, called La Carpio. So it's a concentrated group of Nicaraguan immigrants. We also provide service at a sustainable coffee farm, and they have other products as well called Life Monteverde, and that's up in Monteverde. So this next video I put together, and it's again on the website as well, and the link's in the description below, but we're going to visit and show you what it was like for us to work with. We always try to work with the kids when available, because there are a lot of services for kids during the day, because a lot of the parents are out during the day working in their jobs, and then at night obviously they come back. And so the first part, we're going to discover a little bit about what La Carpio is like. When you talk about La Carpio with a lot of Costa Ricans, it's a place that they won't go to. We obviously do it in a safe manner during the day, and always to places that are known to be okay. We worked with a nonprofit organization to help them and reach the community. And then the second part of the video, we're going to work with Nicaraguans immigrants in the coffee farm, and you'll see what that, and we'll talk about coffee as well. So let's pull that one up, and I'll just give a brief introduction and let you enjoy the kids. But one of the first things you'll see is on the group that we went with that time, there was actually the time that this was being recorded, we actually had a couple of musicians, some good singers, and one who could play the guitar really well. And so as part of his classes that we were learning that week, he worked with some of the instructors, and in one case learned a song that is common in Costa Rica and Central America to play with the kids, and it's called Enano and Gigante. And when he sings, you'll see this, Enano y Gigante, when he says Enano, everybody's supposed to squat down like they're short, and then Gigante, they're supposed to stand as tall as they are, or they can be. And so you'll see that it's fun with the students to see how that's played. We played with them at the center that they had there, did some sidewalk chalk drawings. And then he also worked with one of his teachers to translate the Hokey Pokey song from English into Spanish, and so we played that with them for a bit. So we'll play that and maybe stop and make some comments as well.
Smile.
No.
tu cabeza aquí y quítala, pon tu cabeza aquí. Sacude, sacude, den la vuelta niños, den la vuelta niños. Para your body, pon tu cuerpo aquí y quítala, pon tu cuerpo aquí. Sacude, sacude, den la vuelta niños, den la vuelta niños. Para. Now last part one more time. Den la vuelta niños, den la vuelta niños. Para.
¿Cómo?
Están durmiendo.
No, están durmiendo.
Ahora pues ya se habla.
Sleeping. Asked them where the cars are, said they're sleeping.
Estos son los deditos. Estos son los deditos. Estos son oídos. Estos son oídos. Y este. Y este. Ya se los ojos.
Those are eyes.
Y listo.
Listo. ¿Y qué es?
Una carrera.
Una carrera.
Y la miráis como una carrera.
Y la segunda no tiene ojos. ¿Dónde están los ojos?
Ya le hago.
Ah, he's making his eyes.
Y listo.
Okay, kind of fun. It's always fun to spend times with kids there. So we're transporting. La Carpio is down here by San Jose, and so we're transporting now up to Monteverde in the mountains. And so the coffee in Costa Rica is more up in the higher reaches, not down on the coastal regions. Things grow better up there, not so quite so hot. And in this case, I mentioned that this is a sustainable farm. And what we learn there is about not just the environmentally sustainable practices, because they use a lot of natural things to produce their coffee. I don't know how many of you have ever seen coffee on the bush, but here's a picture for you, so you can kind of get that perspective. But since we're talking about perspectives and practices, in this case it's combined. Sustainability for them goes beyond just making the product that they're producing, the animals and feed and the cafe sustainable. They also talk about being socially sustainable. And one of the things that they focus on is working with their migrants that come from Nicaragua. So they come, let me jump out here. So they work with the migrants that come every year from Nicaragua, because the harvest season for Café especially is in what we call our winter months, so December, January, February, and into March. This video that you're going to be watching is from a trip that we did in December, January. That's when we usually go when there's a break with school. And so this farm, talking about being socially sustainable, helps provide places for their workers to live. They provide them a higher wage than most other places in the country do. They also help them with the food that they have, and if the whole family comes, then for the younger children they help make sure that they also have opportunities for education. So that talks about not just being financially sustainable, but also socially sustainable, and giving the benefit of what society has to offer on a whole to everyone. Okay, so we're going to watch a couple of things here. Just going to let it run so you can see what a coffee field looks like. Café, you'll see the coffee beans here on the plant. You'll see some that are green, some that are red, some that are yellow. The red and yellow ones are the ones that are are ready to be picked. The green ones still need to be ripened. And so when you're harvesting coffee, they go through and pick only the ripe ones. And so many times that they'll have to go through the same field multiple times before the coffee is all harvested. And at the end, we'll stop at different points and I'll give you some feedback or some input. I'll show you when the day is over and when they're coming in to deliver their coffee to the people who will take it to be processed. Okay? All right, so let's enjoy this part. Let's get back on to the video. There we go. Okay, so just to give you a little, that previous part was just to give you an idea of what it looked like to be in one of the coffee fields. Here these are students working. We're going to start working with some of the migrant workers. What we did was we paired off 1 or 2 students with each of the workers and we helped them pick coffee. Hopefully we didn't slow them down because they're very fast, but they also got to converse with them and talk with them about what their life is like as a migrant coffee picker and what it was like to come from Nicaragua down to Costa Rica, and then they also go back because they also work in agricultural efforts in Nicaragua. This young man here in the black shirt and hat actually has been there talking about social sustainability. He came as a child to work in this farm and has become one of the foreman overseeing a lot of the work that goes on. So he's managed to elevate and work his way up in the ranks and actually works at the farm year round instead of just on the migrant basis when it's time for picking. So we'll jump ahead a little bit here and you'll get to see, you can watch the whole video on your own. I don't want to necessarily take that here, but we did have a student visit with one of the workers that's there, so I'd like you to meet him. ¿Cómo te llamas?
Esteban.
Esteban.
Sí.
¿Cuántos años tienes?
16.
16.
Sí.
Wow. ¿Y cuánto tiempo llevas trabajando en el café?
Primera vez que vengo.
¿Primera vez?
Sí.
¿Y de dónde eres?
Nicaragua.
¿Qué parte?
En la isla de Monteverde.
Ah, muy bien.
Sí.
Ahí tienen un volcán, ¿no?
Sí. En sección madera.
Sí.
Sí.
Pues qué bien. ¿Y qué tal Costa Rica?
Bien. Bonito.
Buena experiencia.
Sí, sí.
¿Es tu familia?
Sí. Papá, hermana, mamá.
Muy bien.
No.
So real quick, just you can obviously listen to the caption or put the captions on and do the auto translate for YouTube to get what was done in the interview there. But just to give you an idea, he mentioned that he and his family come from the island up here this is an island that's in the middle of this big lake in Nicaragua. So they travel from here down to Monteverde to participate in the coffee harvest. All right, let's jump to a different section.
Llega a madurar más rápido.
This is
Y es por eso que dura un poco. En partes en unas regiones en Costa Rica no.
sorry, he started working as a young boy and his family came and now he's one of the foremen. He actually takes people on coffee tours now, which is another side of the place that we're at. So they're sustainable in producing the coffee, but also in participating in the tourist industry as well.
No dura mucho. Porque
¿Es donde es más cálido?
sí,
Dura menos.
dura menos. Es más cálido. Y es que
¿Cómo se llama?
Carlos Antonio,
Ok. ¿Y cuánto, cuántos años tiene?
23,
¿Y le gusta este trabajo?
sí, claro.
Sí. ¿Y cuándo terminar?
No, yo trabajar solo 22 días, nada más,
Ah, ok.
22.
22 días.
¿Por qué solo 3?
Porque tengo que ir a arrancar frijoles allí donde yo vivo.
Ah, ¿so tiene 2 trabajos?
Sí, claro.
Ah.
Muchos trabajos.
¿Cómo se dice? Que, bueno.
Está bien. Es todo.
Ok.
Gracias, amigo.
Gracias, amigo nuevo.
So we saw there with that young man that he was talking about after he was done there working at the finca, the coffee farm there, he was going back to Nicaragua to work in harvesting frijoles. So, okay, this next section gets us to ponder a little bit about, again, perspective, to ponder what's in your cup of coffee. So this next little portion, and I won't run the whole thing, but you can watch if you'd like. It's quite a lengthy session. You'll see as the workers are bringing their costales, the big bags like the one we have up here, into the truck that's picking them up. They start measuring them, and what you'll see is a little box, and that box, the caja, is what they use to measure how much each person is harvested in a day, and they're paid on the basis of how many of those little boxes they fill. So they'll fill them, and one person was there counting and keeping track of each individual and how much they do. And just so you can have an idea, each of those little boxes, they earn, at the time this video was shot, they were earning about $2 for each box that they filled. And so on average, I think they pay them a little bit more now, almost $3 for a box. But on average, they earn about between $50 and $75 a day. But it's based on the number of those boxes that they make. So you can imagine the work that it takes to pick one of those things. We were there with them for just a few hours, and it took, none of our students or me on the many times that we've been have been able to fill a whole box in the time that we've been there, but they fill multiple throughout the day. So I'll play and then we'll do a little bit more commentary. Sorry about the bad.
Ni ideas. ¿Ah? Dijo que sí. ¿Quién?
So there you can see the box being filled, and they load it in the back of the truck, and the truck takes it over to the processing plant where they'll spread it out and let it dry, or they'll wash it and break it up. Because what you see, the red cherry, it's called in English, inside has two kernels of coffee, and so that one box that you see there maybe fills one bag of unground coffee, that you might buy from a store. And so when you think they're getting $2 or $3 for one of those boxes, how much does it cost for you to get a cup of coffee, for example, at Starbucks or McDonald's or wherever, Dunkin' or wherever you do get it, or maybe if you don't drink coffee, but you kind of get the idea of what actually goes into your cup of coffee. So this is all part of that. Here we have entire families working at the finca. I wanted to jump ahead a little bit, but take the opportunity to watch more of that. Well, the process here is as they fill it up, but here near the end of this video, here, let me do this so you can just get an idea of the amount of coffee. I think I did a zoom in on the truck. You can see the red and yellow beans in there. We'll jump ahead here a little bit because I want you to see an interview that one of our students had with one of the family members that So as this says, what were you doing when you were young? The question is, so this little girl that you're going to visit with here, I think is around 12 years old. We'll confirm that as we listen to it. But she was visiting with one of our students as she was working here at the coffee farm.
Bueno, por primera vez. Nombre. El de mi hermano es Esteban.
Esteban.
El de mi papá es César.
¿César?
César.
César. Ah. Uno hermano.
Solo un hermano.
¿Cuántos años tienes?
12.
12 años. ¿Y es tu primer viaje a Costa Rica?
Sí, mi primer viaje.
¿Y te gusta?
Sí.
¿Cuántas horas viajaron para llegar?
Salimos de allá a las 6 de la mañana. Venimos llegando aquí a las 3 de la mañana.
Wow.
Del siguiente día.
Un poquito largo, ¿no?
Sí.
¿En autobús?
Sí.
Ask her what time she wakes up.
Vayan, Adriana, que los de los hornos les vayan a ir primero, así que...
In the morning.
Primero los de los hornos.
¿Usted friento?
¿A qué hora te despiertas
Despiertas.
todos los días para llegar a trabajar?
Yo me despierto a las 5:30 de la mañana. 5:30, agarramos, cuando tenemos que salir a coger a otros lados, agarramos el camión a las 5:30. A las 5:30 de la mañana agarramos el camión que vamos a coger a otro lugar. ¿Usted de dónde es?
¿Cuánto tiempo
She asked you a question.
Oh. Repeat, por favor. What did she ask you?
¿De dónde es?
Oh, well,
Okay, well, there we get a little bit of an experience. This young girl, who was 12 at the time, this is several years ago, but it was her first trip from Nicaragua to work here with her family. So her entire family, her older brother was one we saw earlier, who was 16 at the time, his first trip there. But the whole family comes, and if the whole family wants to work, they can. Should say that this farm helps with immigration papers and for them to have the permission to work legally in Costa Rica. There's the same issues that we see here in the United States with undocumented workers coming in and also documented workers coming in. So the immigration laws are very similar. If you're interested in that, please do some research on that as well, because we've met people, not necessarily here, but in La Carpio, that don't have the proper the legal documents to work. So in Costa Rica, so there are the same types of laws and struggles there. So the perspective is the same in many places. Let me jump out of this view. So we can kind of wrap things up. So I hope this kind of interaction that our students get in this program, it opens our eyes to see how things are similar. We just talked about the immigration issues experienced in the United States. The same thing is happening in Costa Rica and other countries around the world. But it also helps you understand that there are humans behind all of this, and the perspectives can change and be different. So, well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode on Costa Rica. Again, check out all the things in the video description so you can take some more tours and learn some more about history. The one thing I'll close with, we normally do the author quote, but the biggest thing that I wanted you to focus on and take away was what we started off with, the phrase that we have on our t-shirts that's on the back, which says pura vida. And in your quest for pura vida, the idea culturally is that understand what's important in your life, and to understand that everything's going to be okay, and understand that it's up to us to make those things be okay. Okay? All right. Well, that's it for today. Muchas gracias. Hasta la próxima. Adiós.